Better now than never, I suppose. Okay, so for those who are watching this on the video, I just started the recording, and I'm sorry, guys, that are listening live. I'm just going to backtrack for a moment so that anybody watching this on the video will not be totally lost. Topic is localizing dashboards, and we're going to see how to translate a dashboard from the design language, in this case English, into other languages. And the point that I was just getting to is that to do that, I've got this sample dashboard, and there are basically 3 steps to doing that, to localizing a dashboard, or to localizing those aspects of a dashboard that can be localized, which are basically static text such as the chart titles, the text element up here, the titles of elements, for example, the title of the crosstab, the title of the selection list, but not data that is being pulled from the database, right? Data that's being pulled dynamically from the database, for example, the items in the selection list and the category names, the product names, these values, those cannot be localized in using the technique that I'm going to show you. So there are 3 steps, as I said before. The first is to define the text IDs for the text that you want to localize. The second step is to set up the mapping file that actually specifies the translation. The third step is to set up the locale in Enterprise Manager. Okay, and for those of you for whom that was complete repetition, I apologize, but now I don't need to completely remake the video. So thanks for your patience. So let's take a look at those 3 steps. First step, I'm going to go in the design view of the dashboard, go up to the Options button up here, and you'll know that note that under View Sheet Options, there is a Localization tab, right? So obviously that's the place to go, Localization. And then basically what you're going to see on the left-hand side here is a list of the various components in the dashboard that can be localized, right? It's not going to be every component in the dashboard because there are many components that don't have any localization capacity. For example, a range slider, there's nothing to localize on a range slider. So even if you have a range slider in the dashboard, you won't see it listed here. So you'll see here the items that can be localized and the properties of those items that can be localized. So what you do, I'll try to do this quickly so as not to take too much time, but basically you select the text that you want to localize, for example, the x-axis chart title, press Add, or you could just double click it, and then that adds that to the right panel over here. And so on the right side, you've got the actual component property name, and then there's next to it a text ID. And so the text ID you can leave as the default, right? Or you can change it, right? You could type a new text ID in there. So in this case, I'm just going to, for the most part, use the defaults. And so I'll go down the list and select all the properties here that I want to localize. So those include the x-axis title, the y-axis title, the color legend, right? There's a color legend axis title, right? That's the title of the legend in the chart. And then we're also going to have, let's see what else we're going to have. From the crosstab here, I want the category and the name, not the actual categories and not the actual names, but just the column headers here. So I'll go down to crosstab 1 and add a product category, product name. And then, as I said before, in the crosstab, I also want to localize the measure column headers. So that would be sum product total, sum product quantity purchased. And then from the selection list over here, I want to localize that title. So from selection list 1, I'll add title. And then you see down here, we've got text 1. That's the text element up here. Obviously, if you were doing this for real in a real dashboard, it would have been better to give all of these components more meaningful names. You can't do that here, but if you open up the component properties, for example, for the text element, you would probably want to name that something like dashboard title, so it's not just text 1, but I neglected to do that, so I'm left with these generic names. Okay, let me see if I've got everything that I wanted here. I think so. Oh, the crosstab title, I missed that. So also the crosstab title, that's this title here. Okay, so now I've got the list of text items in the dashboard that I want to localize. Now, the spaces in the text IDs are not a problem. We just have to handle those when we set up the mapping file. We have to handle those by escaping the spaces with a backslash. I'm not as confident about the colons and the parentheses that it added here in the default text ID. So I'm going to, oops, I double-clicked that, and double-clicking removed it. Let me add it back. Okay, so what I'm going to do with the colons here is just remove them. All right, so I'm going to remove that colon. I'm also going to remove the parentheses. My instinct here is that the parentheses and the colons are not going to work well. I could be wrong, but since I'm in the driver's seat here and I get to define these text IDs, I'm just going to define them in such a way that I don't expect any problems. Okay, so there's my list of text IDs, and I can press OK at this point, and it saves those text IDs. Now, that doesn't. Oh, there's a question. Question is, how about the spaces? Yeah, as I was saying, I know that I can handle the spaces with a backslash to escape the space. So that's why I left the spaces in there. My own personal preference would be, if I were setting this up, my own personal preference would be to remove all the spaces, just because I don't really see anything to be gained by having spaces there, other than that it's an opportunity to to mess things up, to get tripped up with the spaces. But I'll illustrate that the spaces should be okay. You just have to handle them the right way in the mapping file. So I'm just going to leave the spaces in those ones. In these ones, I remove the spaces. And so that's it. Now, so I've got the list of text IDs, and basically what I need to do now is I need to set up the mapping file that will map each of these text IDs to the translation text. Now, I do see another problem here, right? I've got two text IDs called title. That's not so smart, because now I don't know what exactly will happen. So I'm going to disambiguate those. So this one I'll call crosstab title, and this one I'll call selection list title. Okay, so yeah, so I would definitely want to avoid having any duplicates here, because that will certainly create some kind of problem in the mapping, because if you have duplicate text IDs being mapped to different terms, there's no way that mapping can be applied correctly. I'm sure it will do something. You'll get probably get a partially translated dashboard, but I don't know exactly what the what the consequences would be. So we've got a list of distinct IDs here. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave this on the screen, and I'm going to set up the mapping. So basically, to set up a mapping, you need to define a file with a particular name. And the particular name uses the language and the region codes for the locale that you want to set up. So in this case, I want to set up as I said before, a French Canadian locale. And if we take a look at the documentation, which I have up in the background here somewhere. Right, so here's the documentation on localization. So what it says is that when you don't have to read the whole screen, I just want to bring your attention to one thing. It says that when you're setting up a localization for a dashboard, the name of the file, the mapping file, is this. It's SREE bundle underscore, and then the language code, which in our case is FR, and then underscore the country code, which in our case, in our localization example here, is CA. So a French Canadian localization would be SREE bundle underscore FR underscore CA dot properties. So that's the file that I'm going to create. So let me, now where do I go to create that? I'm going to go into the, let me make sure I have the right, all right, so this is my, this window that I'm looking at, this is my installation of Style Intelligence, and what I'm going to go is into the server tree, right? So this is all, this file needs to be placed on the server, and it needs to be placed in this location, in webapps/sree webinf/classes. This, for those of you who are old hands at our software, you'll know that this is the default location for the server repository, right? The server registry sree/webinf/classes, and this is where you'll put that file. It doesn't have to be there. It's just this is a safe place to put it. If you put it somewhere else, you'd you need to make sure that it's on the class path and et cetera, et cetera. So this is probably the best place to put it. So there is no file with that name here right now. So what I'm going to do is I'll create a text file with that name. So I'll just go to new text file, new text document, and I'm going to give it that name, SREE bundle underscore FR underscore CA dot properties. It asks me something about the changing the file name extension. I say okay. All right, so now I have that file, and in that file I need to create the mapping. And basically the mapping is going to be a list of these text IDs and what each of these text IDs maps to. So it's this conceptually very simple. Just have to find the, no, not that one. Right, so there it is. So what I'm going to do is open this file for editing. Which shouldn't take as long as it's taking. It's just a text file. Okay. Now let's try that again. Oh. Okay, it decided to pop up. Okay, that was nice of it. Okay, so so here's my empty text file, and as you can see from the top here, it's in on the server path, web apps SREE, web INF classes, and there's the file name. Now, to save you all from my incredibly slow typing, what I'm going to do is I have a file that I made the other day that has most of these properties. I probably just need to adjust it slightly. So, so this is a file that I made the other day. I'm just going to copy this and paste it in over here. Right, so just imagine that I had just typed all this, and I'll just show you what it is. So what I want to do here is I want to have on the left side of the equal sign, right? Every line has an equal sign. It's just a property definition file. On the left side, I want the text ID. So I want to make sure, let me bring that back. Right, so here's my actual text IDs. So x-axis title, here I did it yesterday all as one word, but clearly over here I've got spaces. So I have to escape the spaces, right? So like this, right? So x backslash space, and then axis backslash space title, right? So it's exactly the text ID that I have here, which is over here x space axis space title, except that I escape the spaces with a backslash. Okay? And then I have the mapping, right? So for the x-axis title, I want that x-axis title to say French category, right? So currently, if you look at the dashboard here, sorry to keep jumping back and forth, right? The title here just says product category, right? So when somebody views this from the French Canadian locale, I want that title to say French category. If you thought that I was actually going to translate things into French, sorry to disappoint you. I don't know French, so so this is my my make-believe French. I'm just put the word French in front of everything. Wouldn't it be nice if speaking different languages were that easy? So anyway, so I'm going to go down the list. Y-axis title again. Over here it has spaces, so here I escape the spaces. Color legend axis title. Color legend axis title. Right, and that's going to say French legend. Let me just make sure I've got all of them. Crosstab, where's the crosstab title? Crosstab title is one word. So over here I don't need to escape it. Again, I'm doing this slightly different than I did it the other day, so I'm just making sure that the text IDs that I have in my mapping file exactly match the text IDs that I set up here. Product category and product name. Do I even have those? Yeah, I don't see those here. So I'm going to add those. Product category. And I'll just have that say French cat. And product, what was the other one? Product name equals French name. Okay, you don't need to escape spaces on the right side of the equal sign. So, if you're writing you know, if you're writing replacement text on the right side of the equals, you don't need to do anything with the spaces. That's fine. Also, punctuation is fine on the right-hand side. Let's see if I got everything. Color, legend axis, y-axis title, x-axis title, product category, product name. Some product quantity purchased is already there, some product quantity purchased, and I'm translating that to French Q. Some product total is already here, French T. Crosstab title. Oh, you know what? I already did. I've duplicated. All right, so these ones I don't need. All right, so here I've got product category, product name. Right, previously I had these ones, so those ones I can get rid of. Right, selection list. So where was I up to? Crosstab title. I don't think yeah, there's crosstab title. A selection list title. All right, no space. And finally, text 1 is there. Okay, so you know, as best as I can tell, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It looks like much less over here, but yeah, so I have the same number here and here, and hopefully if I've not made any blunders, then basically my text IDs that I've defined here are the same text IDs that I've got on the left side of the equal sign in my mapping file. Okay, there's a question. Sorry, I was paying. Okay, somebody's, thank you. Okay, so if anybody has a question about the mapping file, again, I'm trying not to make this overly complex, but it's just a left side and a right side and an equal sign in the middle. Left side has to exactly match the text ID, except that you have to escape the spaces with the backslash. The right side is whatever replacement text you want, right? So if you're doing, you know, a French translation, on the right side would be the French terms, the French equivalents. If you're doing a German localization, on the right side would be the German terms, and you know, so hopefully you get the idea. So what I'm going to do is now save this file. Okay, and again, I saved it in this in the classes directory. And now we're almost ready to test out this localization. So I'm going to go back to the dashboard and make sure that I save the dashboard with those text IDs. And there's one more thing now that we need to do. So we've assigned the text IDs in the dashboard. That was step 1. Step 2 is setting up the mapping file, the SREE bundle file, which we just did. There it is, right? And we saved it in the right place in the classes folder, so that translation is available. The last thing that we need to do is define the locale in Enterprise Manager. So what I'll do is I'll go back to my server over here, go into Enterprise Manager. Obviously, this is something that an administrator would be doing. Enterprise Manager, and log in. Right, and what I need to do is I need to define that locale, the French-Canadian locale. So to do that, I go to Configuration, and there's a page here called Localization. Right? And there's not a whole lot to do here. If you do come here, you'll see that it gives you a little bit of a description as to what's going on, and it says something about the specification, these country and language codes. We didn't make up that. There's some international specification that defines the language and country codes, so you can look that up if you're really interested. And it also tells you the name of the file that you need to create. Here it has an example of US English. Right, so if you were doing a translation into US English, or if you wanted to have multiple translations, and if the bulk of your users were using US English, you could make a localization for that, and for other users you could make other localizations. So anyway, just a little tidbit of how to do this is here. Of course, the documentation has more about it. So what I want to do is I want to press the add button and then just create the localization. So the language code is FR, right? The country code is CA, and the locale label is arbitrary. This is just basically what the user is going to select when they log in. So locale label, I'll just have it say French Canada. Okay, so the key thing here is that the language code and the country code have to match the language and country code that you used in the SREE bundle file, right? So that's basically how it's going to do this localization, right? When a user logs in from the French Canada locale, it's going to check what are the country and language code, and it'll see FRCA, and then it's going to look for a file with that name. It's going to look for a file SREE bundle underscore FR underscore CA dot properties, right? And so that's how it gets the correct localization for that user, right? If a different user logs in from using a different locale, let's say German or something like that. I don't even know what the codes would be, but I'll just make something up. Let's say GE and GE for German. That's probably not right, but just as an example. So if a user logs in from a German locale, if you set up such a locale, then it would see language code GE, country code GE, and then it would look for a file SREE bundle underscore GE underscore GE dot properties, and it would load up for that user that particular translation. Question? DE, thank you. Thank you, Hind. I was thinking somebody must have a better guess at that than I would. Okay, thanks. So DE, so let's say, DE, whatever, anyway, you get the idea. Now, the one thing I just want to mention here before we go forward is that you're not technically restricted to doing this only for geographical locations and languages. So in other words, this will work, or a slight variation of this will work even if you wanted to do a localization that was not based on, let's say, a country and a language. Let's say you wanted to do a localization that was based on a particular office where the person is logging in from, all in the same country, everybody, let's say, speaking English, but for whatever reason, if somebody logs in from a California office, you want to, have a particular text mapping that those users would see. If somebody logs in from the New York office, you might have a different text mapping, or maybe somebody logs in from somebody who's a executive in the company. You want them to see one mapping. Somebody logs in who's working on the on the production floor, on the in the factory. You want them to see a different text mapping. So you can do that type of thing also. You're not strictly limited to just basing this mapping on languages and geographical locations. I'm not going to do an example like that, but I just want to put the germ of an idea there, that just to let you know that this is a little bit more flexible than just localizing for different countries. And I think we have at least one customer who's actually using localization in that kind of, what would you call it, off-label, I guess would be the kind of pharmaceutical expression, off-label tech approach of using localization, not for different countries or languages, but for different divisions of the company or something like that. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that. But let's just continue through this example. So I'm back in Enterprise Manager here. I'm defining this localization, French Canada, FRCA, press apply. Right, and so now what this means is that when a user logs in, they're going to be able to select, if they want, the French Canada locale. And when a user does that, that should then, because it knows FRCA, it's going to look for this file, SRE bundle FRCA, and it's going to try to localize any dashboard that has these text IDs defined. So let's see if that works. So I'm going to, now that I've got this set up, I'm going to go and log in as going to log out. And we'll see if I actually need to, you know what, I should probably reload the, let me close this. And I'll just reload the properties file. I might need to restart the server, but hopefully it might be enough just to reload the properties file, so I'll try that first. So back in Enterprise Manager, I'm just going to go over here, reload the server configuration. Hopefully that should be enough. And now I'll go and log in as a user. And you'll notice that now that I have defined a localization, I've got this locale menu over here, right? So when a user is logging in, they'll see this locale. There's the French Canada localization that we set up in Enterprise Manager. And so a user can select from here. Now, as an administrator, you can also define locales for different users. I'll just point that out to you in a moment. But this is one approach. A user can select their own locale, log in, right? Everything looks pretty much the same because we haven't specified localization for anything else other than one particular dashboard. So it's this dashboard called local dash. So I'll load up that dashboard, and then we'll see what result we get. Okay, so let's see if all of our localization actually went through. So there's the title, French sales dashboard. That localization went through. Here's the y-axis and x-axis. You can see that those mappings went through okay. Hard to tell about the legend. That one didn't seem to go through. Color, nope, that one didn't go through. So we'll check what happened there. So the color legend didn't work. There's the selection list title went through fine. This title went through fine, but not these guys, not category and name, but these ones did. The measure titles went through fine. Okay, so you can see the measure titles: French total, French T, French Q. So those got translated. And before we go back and just try to fix the problems, you'll note that there was a change in the currency format, right? Because these values had a currency format on them, and you can see that it's trying to adapt those currency values to the French Canadian locale. Now, I have to say I don't know how people in French Canada represent currency, so I don't know if that's right or not. I don't know if that's clearly it's got the dollar sign jumped over to the right. It used spaces instead of commas, and it used a comma instead of a decimal point. I don't know if that's the right way that a French Canadian person would want to see a currency displayed, but the main point is that it did try to adapt the currency, and it would be the similar thing if you set up, for example, a Japanese localization, or if you set up a British localization, you would see a shift in the display of the currency to match that locale. So here somebody's probably going to inform me whether that's right or not. Dave, I guess that is, says that's right. US number 1000 will be 1000,00 in French. Okay, so that seems to be the correct localization. Thank you very much. And so my point is that it will try to adapt the currency to the locale. Now, that's not always desirable because if these numbers are, these are the numbers that are being pulled from the database, right? If these are in US dollars, then you might not want that being automatically adapted to, for example, pounds or euros or yen, because the number will stay the same. It's just the currency symbol will change, and that will be very confusing. So, if you do want to avoid that kind of automatic locale adaptation of currency, what you do, and probably most of you know this already, first of all, we have to find that dashboard again. What you would do is you would, you see now that I've opened up the dashboard as this French Canadian user, right? So even in the design view, right? You see it's displaying in French because now the server thinks that I'm a user logged in from a French Canadian locale. So anywhere I view this dashboard, whether in the portal or in the designer, it will show the localization. But my point is that if you want to avoid that automatic localization of currency, what you do, again, is you right-click on any of the currency columns, go to Format, and then just specify a number format with the desired currency symbol, right? So if you want these numbers to always display with a dollar sign, and then just like this with commas every 3 places and a decimal point in the usual place that U.S. Citizens expect it to be, then you would just apply a number format like that, and that will basically, interesting what it's done there. Hasn't completely honored my format. Okay, I'll have to see, have to look into that. It honored the placement of the dollar sign, but not the punctuation. Okay, I'll look into that. Maybe the localization actually overrides the punctuation specification. So I'll check on that. So anyway, let's fix the couple problems that we saw, and then I'll just try to wrap up quickly. So what were the problems? Looking back at the looking back over here. Actually, I could see the problems over here. Problems are the legend title. Why is that not localizing? Let's see. So first of all, the first thing that I want to check is whether I overrode that title. Right, so if you override the default title, then the localization is not going to work. Here's a question. Is that possible to calculate actual conversion? So the question is, can you actually convert those numbers? You could, right? Probably what you would do is you would create a calculated field, right? So you would create a new field and just define that calculation. You could do that in a worksheet, or you could do that at the dashboard level by creating a new calculated field. I think if you probably look back through the webinars, we probably did a webinar on doing calculated fields and script in a dashboard. So I'm not going to go into that now, but yeah, you could set up that calculation, but it would be a manual. It would be a manual thing. You would actually need to enter the conversion and do the multiplication and so on. In the sense that I mean manual in the sense that not in the sense that you have to do it manually for every value. Of course, the script will do it automatically for every value, but you can't just say give me the US to yen conversion, and somehow magically all the values will convert. Okay, so right. So what I was saying is that if you explicitly override, for example, a column header, a name over here, or a legend title, then the localization won't work. So that's what I'm going to check. I'm going to go to legend properties, and it appears here that I may have overridden that title. So I'm going to delete that, and it puts it right back. Interesting. So let me see, and let me check these ones also. Going to delete that. Yeah, so you see I'm deleting, I guess I had explicitly entered the value name here. So if I delete that and go back to the default, right, so then it immediately converts to the localized mapping, right? So I had overridden those titles by typing in here. I typed in name, so if you override that title, right, so then the localization doesn't take effect, but if I delete that override, then the localization takes effect. Now I'm not sure what's happening with the legend, so let me double check my mapping here. Color legend axis title. Let me check over here. Color legend axis title. This looks right to me. It should say French legend. Why is it not picking up that? Let me see without, whoops. Let me see without the spaces, if the spaces are mucking it up for some reason. I'm not going to spend too much time because I want to show you one more thing before we have to go. So I'm just removing all the spaces. I see somebody has a question. I'll get to that in a second. So I'm just changing this text ID to match. Oh, I think somebody caught a typo. I think caught a typo, which I didn't see. The slash was in the wrong place. So anyway, I changed it now. So let's see if I can see if I save this. So now, and let me just move. See, it's interesting. It's putting the text ID there. Why is it putting the text ID there? I may have to look into that. So let me just try logging out, logging back in, and if it doesn't work, I'm not going to spend too much time on it. It might be a simple mistake that I made, but I do want to show you one more thing. Actually, let me. I should probably reload the properties file. Okay, now we'll go back, log out, log in, make sure I specify the French Canada locale, view this dashboard again. Yeah, and it's still it's putting the text ID there. Obviously, that's not right. What I should see is this mapping. It should say French legend, color legend access title. Yeah, I don't know if that's a bug or if I need to restart the server, but I'm just going to leave that as it is. You know what it should be doing, and hopefully, hopefully, if I did make a silly mistake, then hopefully you won't run into that. But I'll check that after the webinar and see if that's a bug or if there's something deeper going on there. But anyway, I hope everybody gets the idea of how to localize the dashboard. Again, the 3 steps are: you set up the text IDs in the dashboard in the Visual Composer by going to Options, the Options dialog box in Visual Composer, then and define your text IDs. Step 2, define the mapping file. Step 3, go to Enterprise Manager and define the locale. Now, the last thing that I want to show you, and then I'll take any questions, of course, is that you can also localize the portal itself, right? By the portal, I mean all of the paraphernalia of the, the portal that the user sees, like these tabs up here, the names of the various reports and dashboards over here. If there's dialog boxes displayed, so for example, if a user opens a dialog box like this, an email dialog box, if there's text that appears in that dialog box, you can localize that text. For example, these tabs here, this text over here, right? So all these aspects of the user portal can actually also be translated into a different language. Now, if you wanted to do that, kind of from top to bottom, basically translate the entire user portal into a different language, that would be a substantial undertaking because there are hundreds and hundreds of different text elements in the user portal, right? Every dialog box that you can open, here's a print, here's a schedule dialog box, right? If you go to the schedule tab here, right, here's you open another dialog box over here, right? All this text can be localized. So I think you begin to get a sense of just what an undertaking that would be to translate the entire user portal into a different language. But nevertheless, I want to just show you how it can be done in the event that you would ever want to do that on a more restrained scale, for example. So you could do it. So in this example, what I'm going to do is just translate the tabs at the top, right? So dashboard, repository, design, schedule, those 4 tabs, I want to translate those into my pretend French language. So the way you do that, in this case, you don't have to set up any text IDs as we did to translate the dashboard, but you do need to set up a mapping file. And in this case, the mapping file is called, I'm just going to find the place in the documentation. The mapping file is called srinter, and then the language code, the country code, .properties, right? So it's a different file, and it actually has to go in a different place. It goes into this location, right? So sree/webinf, again, this is in the server tree classes, inetsoft/util. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that there is a folder with that name. So I'll try to find my, right, so here's my classes directory, right? This is for my server installation, sree, webinf, classes, and I do see an inetsoft folder there, right? If it's not there, you could create it. And if I look in there, there is no util folder, right? There's just a folder called demo, right? So what I'm going to do is create a new folder called util, right? So new folder util. Whoops. Okay, so now I do have a folder called util, and in there I'm going to create this file, right? It's going to have to be called srinter_fr_ca.properties, right? So here we go, new text document srinter _fr_ca.properties. Again, it warns me about the extension. Okay, so now I've got this file, and then basically what I do is in this file I set up the mapping. Now again, I have, from yesterday I was playing around and I actually have a mapping that I set up, so I'm going to find this, it's in a different installation here, I'll just track it down quickly. All right, so this is, I'm just going to copy this out of here, again, so I don't waste your time with my typing. Okay, and then I'll go back. So here's the new file that we just made. I'll just open this in the text editor, and I'm just going to paste this mapping in here. So basically what I'm doing is I'm mapping, these are the names of the tabs. Basically, these are the IDs of the tabs, and I'll talk, in just a moment, I'll talk about how you would know that, right? Right, so the ID of the dashboard tab is, not surprisingly, dashboard. The ID of the design tab and the schedule tab, again, not so surprisingly, are design and schedule. So on the left side, we just have those terms, and then on the right side, I have my mapping, my French mapping. Again, my pretend French, I just add _FR. You know, if you wanted to do it this way, like we did before, could do it this way, just to be consistent, although there's no reason to, of course. Okay, so we've got our translation, so that's great. Now the one thing is, you'll note the repository tab. What's the ID of the repository tab? It's, if you look closely here, it's respository. Now, how would you ever know that? Well, I'll get to that in a moment, about how you would know what the codes are for these, you know, basically what the IDs are for these different tabs or for other components. For example, just to you know, just to illustrate this a little further, let's say that you did want to do a you know, full bore localization of the entire portal, right? How would you know what the what's the ID, for example, of these radio buttons, right? How would you know that? How would you know what the, if you want to translate this text here, how do you know what the ID of that text string is, right? So I'll get to that in just a moment. But let's just see how this works. So I'm going to save this this mapping file. All right, and so now basically I already now have in place both of the things that I need. I've got my mapping file, this srinter file with the correct file name _FR_CA. I already have that locale defined in Enterprise Manager because we did that when we set up the viewsheet localization. You remember that we went into Enterprise Manager when we went to configuration, localization, right? So there's that mapping is already set up, and that should be basically it. So all I need, I've defined that localization, I've defined the mapping file that I want, and so now when a user logs in from that locale, the server should look for this file, srinter _FR_CA, and it should translate whatever components of the repository have a translation available for them in this file. So let's see if that works. And then I'll just wrap up by showing you how you would, you know, how you would find out what those IDs are. So I'm going to again reload the server configuration. Hopefully that will be enough, and I don't need to restart. Let's see if it is. So user portal. I don't see the translation yet, so let me try logging out and logging back in. And if that doesn't work, then I'll restart the server. Nope. So didn't get translated yet, so I'm going to close that, kill the server, restart the server. See if I can get the right. Let me just make sure that that's hitting the right server. I think so. French Canada. Okay, and so you can see that that required a server restart, and now the tabs got translated. Not sure what happened to the rest of the repository. Okay, there we go. Right, so that's the basic approach to translating the portal. Now, obviously, there's a big elephant in the room, which is again, how do you know that, for example, the ID of the dashboard tab is dashboard and not something else? Why not? How come it's not dashboard tab? Why is that not the ID, right? So somehow you have to be able to figure out what the IDs are. And for example, how do you know that the ID of the repository tab is respository, which is obviously a typo that somebody made, but nevertheless, that is the ID. So how would you know that? So what you can do is you can look for a file called srinter, and that's basically the default English mapping, right? So I have an example of that over here. At least I thought I did. Oh wait, that's the wrong. Right. So there's this file called srinter.properties. Now, I don't think if you search through the default installation, I don't think you'll find that file because it's actually in the jar file. So if you want to, although I extracted it here, if you want to look for that file, what you would need to do is go into somewhere in your server tree, let's say in the web.inf folder, look for the lib folder there, and in there should be the bisuite.jar file. That's the jar file that contains basically our server. That's all the code that runs the server. And what you can do is you can open that file if you have a software that can do that. For example, zip, unzip, or WinRAR, or some application like that. So if you open that, of course I get a message saying that I didn't pay for it. I'll just use it anyway. Right, so then you go in here, go into inetsoft, and there should be a file there called util. Right, and in that folder, okay, I don't need all this. And in there, right, so I'm looking into this jar file. Somewhere in there, you should be able to find the srinter.properties file. Right, so if you, and which again, I'll show you what it is in a second, but it contains the default English text for the user portal, right? So that's where you'll find that file. Again, you can unzip the jar file or just extract that srinter.properties file. So let's see what's in that file, right? So let me find my way back to where I had extracted that file into inetsoft util. Right, so here it is. So if I open up this file, then what you're going to see is a gigantic, and I do mean gigantic, mapping of codes of IDs to text. Right, and what this file actually is, this file defines the text that is displayed in the default portal. So all of the English text, well, I shouldn't say all, almost all of the English text that you see in the user portal when you're using the portal, whether you're opening a dialog box or clicking on a tab. If you open, the preferences dialog box, all the text that you see in here, all the text that you see, if you open, let's say the schedule dialog box, all the text that you see in here, right? So all this text that is displayed to users in the default portal is all coming out of this file, right? This file sets up all that text. And so this file is where you're going to look to find out what the key is to change particular text. So for example, let's say you wanted to change some text in here, assuming that it's possible, right? So here's a text string that says expand tables and charts, right? So let's say you wanted to replace that with French, right? So you need to find what is the ID for that string. So what you would do is you would go into the srinter.properties file and you would search for it, right? So I do find, I forgot what that was, expand tables and charts, and see if you can find it. Expand tables, and let's see if we can find that. Okay, so I searched for it, and look what I found. I found, here's that string, expand tables and charts, and look, it actually has a sensible ID, right? The ID is expand tables and charts, right? So if I wanted to map that particular text element to French, then what I would do is I would take that key, I would take that ID, and I would copy it into my actual localization file, which in this case is srinter_fr_ca.properties. I would add it just like that to the left side, and then I would do my French, whatever French expansion, whatever I want to, whatever text I want to appear there in place of the default text. Right, so that is the approach that you would take if you wanted to do, whether you wanted to do a wholesale translation of the entire portal, basically that would involve doing essentially creating a whole other version of the srinter.properties file, right? So if you were doing a full translation of the portal, then essentially your srinter underscore fr underscore ca .properties file would end up being kind of a one-to-one mapping of the default srinter properties file, except that on the right side of all these equal signs, you would have French instead of English, right? So you can see that this would be not something that you would do in an afternoon. You'd have to translate basically every single line of this file to get the full portal translation. However, if you just wanted to do something much more limited, like translate translate the tabs, a few dialog boxes, then you would take the approach that I showed, which is that you'd search srinter to find the ID that you want to translate, and then just add that ID and the translation to your mapping file. Okay, well, I spoke for an hour, longer than I expected to go. So let me stop there and take any questions that anybody has about localization, either of the dashboard or of the portal itself. Okay, I don't see any questions, so I'll just wait another few minutes in case somebody's typing. Okay, oh, there's a question. The same approach would apply to styles. Okay, so good question, Hind. So the question is, does the same approach of localization apply to reports in Style Studio? If you're designing reports, not dashboards, in Style Studio, yeah, it's basically the same approach. I think it might even be a little bit more comprehensive, but just since you ask, I'll just show you very quickly that, let me just open up Style Studio and hopefully it won't take 10 minutes to open. But basically what you do is, yeah, there's a localization menu, just like we had in the Visual Composer. We went to the options and found the localization tab there. In Style Studio, there's a localization, I believe it's a menu item from one of the top menus. Oh, it opened, so let's see if I can show you really quick. So here I've got Style Studio open. I'll create a report. And I'll just add a chart. Again, for those of you who are not familiar with Style Studio, this is the report design tool, desktop report development tool. It's also used for other things such as setting up data sources and whatnot. So let's just quickly throw together something here. And so I'm just throwing something on the chart. So we have something to localize. Okay, and so then the localization, if I recall correctly, you go up to the report menu, and there is a menu option there, localization, right? And then the approach is basically the same, right? So you'll see on the left a list of items that are available to be localized. Here in this report, we just have one chart, and it's got a few things that can be localized. For example, in this case, this simple chart, just the x-axis, y-axis. And you select the property, and then you add the text ID. So the interface is slightly different, but you just I would just call it something like X title, right? And then you move on to the next thing, right? So you add, you define your text IDs for whatever components, whatever text in the dashboard you want to localize, and then the rest of the procedure is the same, right? So it's you have to set up the mapping file. It could be the same mapping file that you're using for the dashboard. So if you wanted to do a the same French Canadian localization for the report that you're doing for the dashboard, then you could just add the same, use the same text IDs here, but in any case, it would be using the same file, right? So when somebody loads up this report, it'll look into that same SREE bundle underscore FR underscore CA file to find that localization. So Heinz says the legend will not show in localization. So let's see, that's interesting. for those of you who need to run, I know that it's crossing the hour mark, so those of you who need to jump off, thanks for joining, and hope to see you back next time. Let me just check on the what Hind was saying though about the. So let me add. Let's say. Let me add. Let's say product name as color. Interesting. Yeah. It doesn't offer the the name of the legend as a localizable item. So I don't know if that's just a limitation in Style Studio or if that's a bug. I can look into it. No problem, Hind. Always enjoy your questions. Okay, so yeah, but that you are correct. Yeah, it seems like that's a difference between the localization in the view sheet and localization in the report. Okay, any other questions that I can address before we adjourn for today? Okay, so I guess we'll leave it there. So have a nice weekend, everyone, and hope to see you back next time for another exciting webinar. So thanks for joining, and have a great weekend. Bye.